Hello, everyone, and welcome to my channel Next in Agile with Shafali. If you are new here, I am Shafali and I am PSM2 and CSM certified Scrum Master who share Agile insights. So, if you have not subscribed the channel, please go ahead and subscribe it because you will find a lot of interesting content coming in your way. So, today's podcast episode is really special for me. My guest today needs very little introduction in the agile world, but I am going to give him one anyway because his story is unlike anyone else in this space. He started his career doing jet engines R&D for the US Navy, went on to found multiple companies, and then in February 2001, he sat in a room in Snowbird, Utah, with 16 other people and wrote something that changed how the entire world builds software. He is one of the 17 co authors of the Agile Manifesto. Please welcome Jon Kern. Hello, John, and welcome to Next Gen Agile with Shafali. First of all, thank you so much for accepting the invite and joining me on my channel. It's a huge honor for somebody who is associated with Agile to have you here and listen to your thoughts and know you. So, thank you so much, and thank you to the audience who are watching this podcast. It would be really fun that we'll have this conversation today. So, please watch till the end. And now over to you, John. If you could give a brief introduction to the audience who do not know you because they might not be in Agile or transforming into Agile. But yes, everyone who is in Agile, I think everybody knows who you are. But yeah, please go ahead.
Well, thank you so much, Shafali, for the honor to be here, and it's certainly something I'm very passionate about. And though we often talk about agility and whatnot, for me it's more about delivering value and making customers happy, doing it in a team oriented, more collaborative way.
Mhm.
My background for those who might be new to this area is, I actually started as an aerospace engineer. So for me, software, was kind of a discovery. Yeah, I had a little
Mhm.
bit in university, but it very quickly showed me the kind of the power that you have with software, and then doing it to solve problems and to achieve results and to deliver value. I didn't come here from a traditional software background, but rather from uh, as I like to say, engineers put a man on the moon, so to speak. Not, not because we like to get things done. So
Yeah.
for me, it's all about being pragmatic, and um, agile is not the end goal; it's the means to an end, and that's a critical distinction. I assume we'll be able to cover today.
Mhm. Wow, I really love that statement. So, yes, I'll directly jump to the questions that I have for you today because why not if we have got an industry expert? So, let's directly jump on the questions. When you and the other authors gathered in Snowbird in 2001 and wrote the Agile Manifesto, did you ever imagine it would become the foundation of how entire organizations, not just software teams, would operate 25 years later? And what surprised you most about how far it has traveled?
Well, the fact that 25 years later we're still talking about it. So for me, um, I think one of the beauties about that event and the kind of lack of any one clear view of exactly what happened was because in retrospect it was an important event, but
Mhm.
when we were there, just a bunch of folks getting together talking about things they're passionate about, sharing. It's really when I first learned what Scrum was, and I never heard of Scrum or DSDM. um, I was practicing because I was working with Peter Code and feature driven development, and I kind of blended that with XP. So there were some out there that were well known, but it was a fair amount of folks just being passionate about finding out what was, I like to think of it, common. What was common amongst our, let's say, smaller, less well marketed
Mhm.
practices. So, the kind of the fascinating thing, a way that this is not a true story, but a way that I like to express how I think that this is, was a surprise, I assume, to everybody. I can't imagine anybody in there said, "Oh, I know this is going to knock it out of the park. People are going to be talking about it forever." Yeah, I don't think that's, to a person, I don't think anybody thought that. I like to, I like to sort of tell a fake story to underline that fact. And my picture is Ward Cunningham leaving, our little meeting room on the way to the airport with his luggage, and he kind of turns back and says, "Hey, you think we should put this on the internet?" Because back then the internet was nothing. It was kind of crap in the early 2001. So we kind of look around and go, "Yeah, we at least created four values. Why not?" And we didn't even call them that. Four bullets. We created something, and we all agreed to it. There were 17. I'm a pretty harsh wordsmith, so to speak.
Mhm.
So we
Mhm.
all agreed to the exact wording. Yeah, why not publish it? So that I don't say that as if that story happened. I say it more to underscore. No, we didn't know that it was going to be
Yeah.
something that monumental that is still worthy of talking about. And I would say especially because of some of the things that happened in between then and now that we can get into, I'm sure. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, I didn't expect this.
No, that's true. I mean, but yeah, I think when you look back and think on that, and when you see that it has turned out to be so big, actually it feels good that, oh my god, that something that you discussed in a small room has turned out into so big that the whole world is now following it. So
Very true, and it's very humbling to know to have been a part of that. And the I feel from a historical perspective, this is with all due humility and respect to the founding fathers of our country, which is going to be 250 years old this year.
mhm.
The Declaration of Independence, right? An incredible document, and even the Constitution, an incredible document that has withstood the test of time in terms of it kind of in a very humbling, as modestly as I can say, I think of it very similar, that it unleashed much more than I'm sure ever imagined from Thomas Jefferson, who was the author. And I
Yeah.
think the same thing, that we unleashed freedom, that it felt like it hit a resonant frequency with so many users, and it was um, so wonderful going around the world as I traveled and worked and met various teams, that that kind of I don't want to say power, that's not the right word, but that freedom, the unleashing of people's ability to recognize, yes, that's it, that was what was missing. In other words, those who it resonated with, who
Mhm.
got it, because I still think a lot of people don't get it. A lot of people miss
Yes.
completely confuse it because it's a fairly abstract. Let's be honest. There's
Yeah.
no process. There's no start here. It's a fairly complex
Yeah.
thought process, but I do feel um, very humbled by having participated in creating it.
Mhm. Okay, so then comes my next question. Agile Manifesto has four values and 12 principles. But in 2026, we are seeing a lot of organizations claim to be agile while doing the complete opposite. So, what is the single biggest misinterpretation of the manifesto that frustrates you the most?
Oh, that's a good question, and I think it's almost the funniest thing that popped into my head right away was they might not even be trying to interpret it or think
Hmm.
about, right? That's the biggest mistake, is not thinking about it.
Yeah.
And that just came to me. I think what happened was, you know I'm not sure of the exact timeline, But when the whole certification process and the whole 2 day you're somehow a master,
Yeah.
and the whole apprentice and welding and electrician and plumbing, no, you don't do something for 2 days and call yourself, I've got a certified Scrum Master. Nothing against it. I mean, it's education is good and getting grades is fine, but suddenly that took a life of its own, and that kind of, I think, suddenly people equated a process.
Yeah.
Oh, you got to follow this process and then you're agile. Like, wrong, not true. To your point, you might have some measures of success and it might be better than what you were doing, but that's not the point. Matter of fact, the point is almost in the first value, that it's about people. People, process, and tools. I was saying that long before the manifesto, and I'm still saying it. It's the collaborative nature. It's how do we actually work together to produce value. And I'm a process freak, and I'm a tool nut. I, built and sold tools. I love doing that, but I never lost sight of that's only in the service of the ability to collaborate and deliver value. So if you couple the first value and the first principle, it's making um, smiles on your customers' faces because you're delivering something that they need, something of value, and you're doing it in as light a weight of manner as possible, and you're doing it with eyes wide open. And I think the thing that happened somewhere in the mid 2000s, maybe, that kind of derailed it was this somehow it's all about being certified.
Yeah.
It's all about something that it's actually not about. So the interpretation, it was like, oh, I don't, like, I still go to conferences, and when I speak, I'll ask how many people have read it.
Hmm.
And it's not 100%. They even read the manifesto. So there is no misinterpretation if you didn't read it. Um,
Yeah.
so it's kind of wild. And so I think it's just a complete, um, you know, buyer beware. It's a complete. I don't want to say hijacking, because that's an intentional act. It wasn't intentional. It's
Hmm.
just, I think humans like to gravitate to something simple. Oh, I can just do this, and I'm going to be agile. Oh, we're following Scrum. We're agile. No, you might still suck, and you might be doing Scrum perfectly, but you might suck and you might not be agile at all, because it has
Yeah.
nothing to do with, are you doing some process or are you using some tool. And safe is, just that, and even worse. Safe reminds me of what we were fighting against back in the late 90s and the early 2000s. Rational unified process was big. And, I came from the Defense Department world,
Mhm.
where we had a standardized, it was such a standardized process. It was a military standard, 2167, right? That's how, you got to do it like this. So as an engineer who just wants to get things done for the customer, and as a taxpayer, I was like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm going to build a lightweight method that makes more sense in the context we're in. That's what being agile is all about, is not being dogmatic, but I would say at a minimum, you have to be pragmatic. So I think
Yeah.
that's the biggest misfortune, is people mistook
Yes.
doing a process and getting certified in a process. We're not an ISO 9000, whatever the heck. We're not
Mhm.
producing medical devices or automobile car. Right? That's not what we do in software. It's almost all. There's so much of it is very novel and very uh, innovative, if you allow it to be. So yeah, I think I actually pulled out of the agile movement back then. I was like, all right, you're all on your own because you guys are nuts. This is not
Mhm.
agile. And
Yeah, I think you have touched on a very honest point that has happened, that people are just getting certified to be into the role, but there are so less people who actually understand the gist of being agile. So even the mindset, what exactly we need when you are in any of the agile roles, how you should think, how you should operate, I think that is missing right now. People are just behind the titles, and they will do the certification, they will land into that job role, but when the actually work is coming in, they don't know what to do, how to justify their role, what exactly they need to change, and how they can bring in the value. I think that's really missing in today's agile world. You are bang on it. And what I have observed is also, the management that sits in the organization, they themselves might have not studied the Agile Manifesto. They do not know the basics of Agile, and then they want the process and everything to be done Agile ways. And then it's all, in Hindi, we say a khichdi, right? It's all mixed. Everything is mixed and
Mm.
then delivered whatever has come out best, and then you say that we are Agile. So that is what is happening in current or the present 2026 Agile world, I would say.
Yeah, Shafali, I would say that's been going on for a long time. Um, and I have long said agile is the hardest to
Yeah.
do and be because it takes constant partial attention. It takes vigilance to your point about um, treating what we do as if it's an assembly line with roles and titles and process. Right? That's like um, a good friend of mine from Adapt was John Turley. He would call that a unit wise approach, like thinking of it as units of work, and you stitch them together and you get the right thing at the end. You might, but again, I think so much of what we do demands that constant ability to judge the act that I'm about to take, in terms of what value is it going to produce. Because I often simplify ways to think about agile in terms of the gap in time between taking an action and getting feedback. And
Yeah.
certainly, unit tests is microseconds, and behavior driven tests maybe seconds. Then certainly user tests in their wild with the actual app is much longer. And the whole point is that feedback loop and understanding. I often say you need to understand the user's needs better than they do, because I know the customer's always right, well, in their mind, but it might not. I've been producing um, software as a service applications since the mid 90s. That's probably my first one for IBM's factory automation
Mhm.
system. Helped design and architect and build that with a team. Actually, my first H-1B visa experience with a team of folks from India. Um,
Okay.
and that's part of that adapters. We run some very powerful and kind of intensive workshops with teams to help introduce them with a very often uncomfortable, and we express it as such, like this is going to be uncomfortable because we're going to your point about management and that whole um, those misconceptions about what's
Yeah.
going on, and still not actually delivering value. Now we're going to push the boundaries of how your folks work and how you think to be able to experience that, because I feel you almost have to, not almost, I'm quite confident that we can help your teams experience it, and the challenge, because it's not easy. If it were easy, everybody would do it. What's easy is thinking you're doing it because you're following some checkbox process, and yet you still have crappy architecture. Scaling. A lot of times I see companies trying to scale, their architecture sucks. So they can't. You can add a team, and we're still not going faster. Why? Probably because you don't get it. Like you don't. Again, an engineer, I think I'm blessed with that holistic view of we're everything fights something else, right? There's a balance, there's a sweet spot, and that's takes constant attention to understand. I do one thing over here, it might affect something over here, so um, yeah, it's a challenge from the C-suite on down to
Yeah.
truly embrace what it means to deliver value, and have fun doing it, because if you're not having fun, you're probably not agile. And if you're getting smiles on the customers' faces and you're doing it, without killing yourselves, you're probably agile, right? So there's a lot of crazy misconceptions, and I have a lot of techniques, foundational techniques, to help teams learn how to build software, and how to put the kind of put the people back into the equation is really the key.
Wow. Maybe that topic we will discuss in our next podcast with you, that will actually help the teams to understand that how and what they could improve and what they are doing wrong. So now comes my next question. As we all know that the manifesto puts individual and interactions above processes and tools. Yet in 2026, we are using more tools than ever, more automation, more AI. So do you feel the human element of Agile is being protected, or are we quietly drifting back to exactly what the manifesto was pushing against?
Mm, that's a good way to phrase it. Um, I've been, shall I say, infected by the like Replit.com is my current tool of choice to help deliver value more quickly with software.
Mhm.
And and in general, I think tools, especially the AI, the agentic tools that we can use under the covers. It's Claude. You can use Claude by itself or many different tools of choice. Accentuate whatever you got going on. I think that's so. I could argue I can more rapidly interact with the end users and my own team management faster than I ever could before. Matter of fact, be careful. Don't build an ex Microsoft Word with feature bloat in your favorite web app, because you can build so much, and especially if it's suggesting, hey, you want me to build this? Oh, okay, sure. I didn't think of that, but go ahead. So I think it it has changed my calculus around ways to judge what I might do to um, test ideas out. Like in the old days, a year ago, I would maybe do balsamic mock-ups. I'm not a Figma fan because a lot of times Figma looks too real, and if it's early, like I have a whole concept that I'd love to talk in another podcast about. It's sort of, I often call it sneaking up on the answer. Like you go from a
Yeah.
wide cone of uncertainty to what we need, and there's a lot of things you do along the way to reduce the risks that you need to also be aware of. And part of it is, a lot of times people, if they see it, they can touch it, they'll know it. So I used to use balsamic just to make it really clear. This is a mock-up because it's sketchy. It's not
Yeah.
even real, right? It doesn't look real. So Figma looks real. Figma, you could fall into the trap of, oh, you already did it.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, it was just a freaking Figma, but you click through it and it did stuff. Yeah, well, it's not the app. So I think now with AI, I'll just build stuff that fast. Again, it will work, and it's just easier.
Mm.
Um, and and I think with that sort of power in my hands, the ability to have deeper and richer conversations with end users, it's never been more possible. So I think if you understand the manifesto, if you understand what it means to have agility flourishing, these
Mm.
kind of tools are um, incredibly powerful, because there are things that are just so easy to do now that it helps reduce. Again, it's back to the gap in time.
Yeah.
I don't have to spend. I don't care as much. I used to. I'm not the world's best developer. I'm pretty good at a lot of things. But even my top developers I've ever worked with, uh, you know, that it's really hard to compete with how AI can build stuff. And I can force it to build stuff with the architecture I want. And I can force it to build stuff with behavior driven tests, Cucumber or RSpec if I'm doing Rails apps.
Yeah.
So you can still control it and keep guardrails and have it not go crazy, but you do have to fight it. So
Mm.
it's an interesting opportunity to accelerate the ability to collaborate faster than ever. And it's also an opportunity to crash and burn because it'll happily just build crap too. Like if it sometimes goes crazy. So it's a fascinating new world. And just like in the old days when I started as an aerospace engineer and I got my first taste of what a computer can do, I was like,
Mm.
oh boy, this is amazing. And a funny little story. This is odd, but one of the things I did as a young engineer, as I started writing C code and the EEPROM and a circuit board and being
Mhm.
able to like solder an LED little
Yeah.
light bulb
Yeah.
to the pins on a port and writing some code and the light turns on. Woo! Right. From then on, I knew that's amazing. You can do anything because it goes from something English looking, so to speak,
Mm.
some text
Mm.
to some voltage.
Yeah.
Wow. The rest is just a matter of detail. Well, maybe a week ago, we were in Malta, my wife and I. It happened to be literally 50 yards from our door where we were staying. Let's walk down this street and we found this funny thing called, it was a Saturday. It was probably last
Mm.
Saturday, called Tinkering Day. I love the word tinker. To tinker is to mess around with stuff.
Yeah. 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 Mm.
Yeah. And usually building stuff, the Tinkering Day. And there was a wonderful young man um, that was doing an Arduino board thing. Oh, yeah, I always wanted to do Arduino. So my wife was taking a little thing about pressing metal, making like some little designs. Much,
Mm.
I think there was a Pakistani woman that was teaching it, and then I was
Yeah.
like, anyway, I went to this guy, did some breadboarding, wrote some code, and light turns on. Like, wow, I did that when I was, like your age, young man. Um,
Yeah.
but that kind of power is incredible in what we have at our fingertips today. The ability to do that, um, I think it's unmatched. So much like back then, that looked scary. Like, wow, computers and personal computers. Oh my goodness, it's going to put people out of a job. And well, maybe some, but they'll find different. Just like back then, when I was starting the computer, it was no longer a giant mainframe
Yeah.
that you had to submit jobs to. Suddenly, I was able to use a VAX, or then the PC came out, and I started buying PCs. Every time the chip changed, and now I'm on the Mac. But I think of it the same way. It's an incredible opportunity, and in the right hands, you can do you can do a lot.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
can also shoot both feet off. So
Yeah, no, I think it's an important message for the audience who is listening to this podcast that AI is not a threat for you if you know how to use it for yourself, how to actually make it work for yourself and make a good use of it so that you can actually move ahead in your current role or whatever you are doing. And when you shared that little story, I was back in my days when I was doing engineering in college, and I have done my engineering from electronics and communication. So I have done all those little stuff in the labs when I was doing it. And then when I started my first job, it was not into electronics; it was rather into software. So the thing that I was scared of was always a software that I don't know. I am from electronics background. I have not even learned coding. I don't know how things work as a software. And then the whole industry shift and everything, whatever you have learned in your engineering has gone back and then you start afresh. So I think, yeah, that's really true that whatever things change in the current scenario, we should always try and learn that and use it for our own benefit. And that is how you will evolve as in your.
yeah, yeah, that's good advice, and it also brings back what you were mentioning about roles and people. I think I've never been one about titles or roles or anything like that because what's important is learning what does it take.
Right.
So this is advice to anybody who cares to get advice from me, but it's more about learning what does it take to get an idea to life, whether it's electronic or software or anything. And the whole role stratification and all that stuff comes from bureaucracy. I don't know what, from trying to maybe build efficiencies into process, but
Yeah.
you need to break through that because it doesn't matter. Like, I don't I don't have any certifications. Uh, Now, that's easy for me to say, standing here, as original co-author. Of course, well, you don't need one, John. Yeah, I get it. But at the same time, it's if I did need one, I'd go get one. But the point is, that's not the point.
Yeah.
The point is, do you know what it takes to build something? And if you don't, start where you're at and learn on either side of where you're at, because you will be more valuable. I like to call myself a generalizing specialist. I'm not good at anything per se, but I'm good enough at a lot of things to like, I'll get it out the door. I'll get it deployed. I'll build it. I won't be stopped. Um, and I'm smart enough to know when I need a specialist. Okay, I'll go call up a specialist.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of attitude, bodes well for, new technology showing up. It's learn that it's not a threat. It's a threat if you have a very narrow skill set that's
Yes.
might be wiped out by it. But it's not a threat if you understand that's just another way to deliver some value, and you can leapfrog wherever your skill set was and go above that and learn how to use it maybe. So I think it's it's the age old. I mean, it's incredible. 1903 or whatever was the first time a plane flew, and look
Mhm.
what the heck, Artemis 2 and Elon launching rockets like it's nothing. Like,
Yeah. It's
it's barely
crazy.
over a century later. Like the acceleration, it's not going to stop. The key
Yes.
is, grab on and learn to produce value,
Yes.
and use tools as what they are. They're just tools.
Thank you so much for that advice. And it's very valuable that stop cribbing and start working. That is what I would say. That stop cribbing about what is happening and why it is happening. So it's rather that how you use it and how you learn it and then move forward. Okay, then we talked about this that AI is fundamentally changing how software is built now, as you mentioned. So some teams are shipping in hours what used to be weeks. So my question is, does the Agile Manifesto still hold up in an AI-driven world, or do you think it's time for a new set of values and principles for 2026 and beyond?
Oh, that's a good question. I think the values, even if you are in a different industry than software, of course, it was written for software because it's
Yes.
just a bunch of software folks got together. Um, but others realize that you could bend some of the language in the manifesto to, might be extreme to say law, or
Mhm.
something, or healthcare. Uh,
Hmm.
you can certainly make make some similar things where, like, okay, tell me where individuals interactions don't matter
Yeah.
more than a process and tool. I don't know. I think everywhere probably. So there might be a few principles that might seem very um, software centric or something like that, or I'd
Mhm.
have to look at them regarding if there are any that I would tweak around AI. But my gut says probably it doesn't matter, because the thoughts around the manifesto are abstract enough that, as an engineer working in Defense Department type, contracting, except for the first bullet, certainly the other three values were very much driven from my experience. Like, you know what, I learned it's much better to get real good with collaborating with the let's say the customer, the other end of the contract, than it is getting
Mhm.
into a sorry for the language, but like a pissing match over the contract. Like you've lost if
Yeah.
you're, if you've lost that, or working research and development, which is a lot of what I was doing, R&D work, by its very nature was unpredictable, and you're learning and moving. So how can you possibly, not have a project that changes over time as you discover things? So, I think AI probably puts more emphasis on the need for you to truly understand what the manifesto is about, truly grok it, so to speak, now more than ever. And if I had to say, it's if you didn't read it yet, or if you truly think it's just some Scrum or safe, nah, you better sit down and try to figure out, how can I learn more? How can I, maybe as a team or an individual, focus on one bullet or one principle at a time, and try to dig into it to see what does this mean, and what would AI have to do with any of it.
Yeah.
We already talked about the collaboration part, just suddenly got faster. So speed, just like, size doesn't really matter in terms of, well, this is a really complicated app because it's got millions and millions of rows. Nah, I don't care. Like, that doesn't make it harder, or that's just some technology thing we have to conquer. So a lot of times people confuse um, things that are just more of, or the time frame, but the concepts are still the same. It's just
Yeah.
they happen faster, and you might need to be on your toes more, or you might need to slow it down and not let it take you too far. So I think, um, I wouldn't often say, when people say, "Would you change anything?" The easy answer is no, because much like the Declaration of Independence, I think it hit what I still call it the resonant frequency as an engineering principle, right? It resonates with the domain that it's talking about, and I think, yeah, it stands even today with AI being crazy.
Wow. I really love that take, that it still holds value. So we don't have to forget that if we are using AI, then Agile Manifesto doesn't hold any value. So I think that's a great message that is going out here to the audience who is listening. So yeah, I mean, this is again related to the same what we have discussed, and this is my last question to you for today. So if you could go back to the room in Snowbird and add one more value or principle to the manifesto, something you wish you had included based on everything you have seen in 25 years, what
That's a funny
would
one.
it be?
Yeah, so that's a funny one. Maybe I would add a bullet, or a footnote or something, because
Hmm.
the I call it the preamble, like the part at the top that says, we're still uncovering.
Yes.
Uh, that's active voice. It's not past tense. It's not like we've come down from the mountain and here are the tablets. It's nothing like that.
Yeah.
Um, it's very humble. And then probably the hardest part for people to understand is also the humility at the footnote. While we value, the things on this side, we value that side more. Okay, you need to really understand that is both a blessing and a curse. So I might add a bullet or a footnote that says, no, really, you need to understand that the whole point of that being fuzzy and ambiguous is one of the more important aspects of, let's say, gaining or adopting and it's a, I don't know a better way to say, but the mindset. It's an agile
Mhm.
mindset. But no, it's more of having the capacity to understand different perspectives. And I think different people have different ways that to make their meaning. And this is something that, again, my colleague at Adaptivist, Jon Turley, taught me over the past, I don't know, we've been working together since 2019, that everybody has a way that we make meaning. Given the same set of input, given the same four values that we all read, we don't get the thought bubbles above our head are not the same.
Yeah.
And that is what you need to get aligned. So I would add something around the lines that, if you think this is easy, even just the value page is easy, you don't get it, because it's not. It's in the world of complexity. It's complex. It's a complex concept, and if you don't understand that, then there are ways that you can help improve the way that you make meaning, and there are ways to, as I mentioned, the workshops that we deliver with teams to
Yeah.
help you experience that. because you can grow in your way of dealing with the kind of volatility and uncertainty and ambiguity. There are ways to learn how to deal with that, but that's what, I might add something along the lines of, read it and really understand it, and um, know that this over that is not to frustrate you because there's no process. Step one. No,
Yeah.
that's kind of the whole point, is to put you into a different state of mind, to recognize that com- in when you are solving complex problems that are unknowable, that's when you need to understand the Agile Manifesto the most.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much, John. And thank you so much for patiently answering all my questions. I think I have also got a lot of insights from what we have discussed today. And I'm really excited to have more such episodes where we talk more in detail about, what exactly the teams are doing right now, how organizations are taking agile. So I think it calls off for more episodes that we might be doing in future, so that people could learn more and change their mindset as a whole to understand the whole Agile Manifesto. So thank you again for coming here and sharing your thoughts. And yes, maybe a few words from you. How was your experience to be here?
Yeah, Shafal, I really enjoy it. As you can tell, it's a very passionate subject for me, and I think it's important uh, for folks to hear that, like the AI is not the end of the world, and it's not the end of all of our jobs. It's the beginning, and it's another opportunity for us to take a giant leap
Yeah.
that is almost hard to comprehend, what I've seen so far. So yeah, stay strong and stay true to the manifesto. And if you don't understand it, work hard, understand it. Try to contact people like yourself or myself and see if we can help. Yeah, I
Yes.
think I appreciate your time. I look forward to the next one.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much, John. And thank you to the audience who are watching this podcast. Please do not forget to subscribe and like Next Gen Agile with Shifali, because you'll get more such content that will help you in your Agile journey and, of course, understand the Agile mindset as a whole. Thank you for watching.